Hello everyone, and welcome to my General Hospital Today channel. Harrison Chase is about to crack the alibi Michael Corinthos carefully crafted with Jacinda Bracken for the night of Drew Cain's shooting, but as the detective edges closer to the truth, he may not fully grasp the danger he's stepping into, or the darkness that has quietly taken root in his longtime friend. Ever since Michael returned to Port Charles this past spring, following months of painful rehabilitation from the firebombing that left him burned, broken, and nearly dead, something deep within him has shifted. Rory Gibson's portrayal has injected a bold new layer into Michael Corinthos, controlled, smoldering, calculating, and the audience has been treated to a version of Michael they've never seen before, one whose intentions are increasingly opaque and whose loyalty comes at a steep cost. When it comes to the mystery surrounding Drew's shooter, Michael's behavior has been unnervingly methodical. He knows more than he's sharing, and every move he's made since returning to PC feels less like coincidence and more like deliberate strategy. The trauma of fighting for his life while simultaneously watching his marriage fall apart, and being kept away from his children for an extended period, has hardened Michael, transforming him into a man who will stop at nothing to protect Wiley Corinthos and Amelia Corinthos. This is a Michael who doesn't just guard his children, he cages them within a fiercely controlled orbit, believing that the only way to keep them safe is to maintain total dominance over every threat, real or perceived. That newfound resolve has not gone unnoticed by Chase, who appears more driven than ever to clear Willow Tate's name. Convinced that Michael is Drew's shooter and unwavering in his belief that Willow is innocent, Chase is willing to push past professional boundaries, ethical lines, and possibly even legal ones to expose the truth. His determination intensifies when he uncovers evidence that Jacinda, Michael's airtight alibi, wasn't actually with him during the critical window of Drew's shooting. Rumors have already been swirling that Jacinda spent that time with another client, and all signs point to City Councilman Ezra Boyle as the mystery man she was allegedly entertaining. With his suspicions validated, Chase grows more confident, even cocky. In the GH preview for the week of November 17th to 21st, he declares to an unknown recipient, likely Alexis Davis, that Michael gave the police a false alibi, and I can prove it. To Chase, this feels like a breakthrough, a chance to free Willow from a wrongful accusation and expose a dangerous truth. What he doesn't understand, however, is that this revelation may ignite a war he's not prepared to fight. Exposing Michael's false alibi doesn't definitively prove that he shot Drew, but it does place Michael in a vulnerable position, one he will not tolerate for long. A threat to Michael's credibility is a threat to his custody of Wiley and Amelia, and that alone is enough to unleash the full fury of a man who has already lost too much. There is no universe in which Michael allows Chase's betrayal to go unanswered. To make matters worse for Chase, this investigation isn't official. He's not conducting it through the PCPD. Instead, he's been snooping around privately, crossing boundaries that could cost him his career and his badge if the truth comes out. And Michael, rich, powerful, and newly ruthless, has every resource he needs to strike back in ways Chase could never anticipate. Aurora Media provides Michael with an enormous platform and influence, giving him the ability to damage Chase's reputation, manipulate public perception, or sabotage Chase professionally without ever getting his hands dirty. But perhaps the most dangerous angle Michael could exploit is personal rather than professional. Chase is married to Brooke Lynn Quartermaine, Michael's cousin, and the two are among the closest couples in Port Charles. Their bond is strong, but not invincible. Michael knows exactly how much Chase loves Brooke Lynn and how deeply BLQ trusts Michael. That trust gives Michael leverage, and if he decides to target their marriage as retaliation, he has all the means necessary to tear their world apart. A quiet whisper, a well-timed rumor, a manipulated photo, or a planted story at Aurora Media could create cracks in their relationship that Chase would struggle to repair. One well-placed strike could destroy years of progress for Chase and Brooke Lynn, and Michael knows it. The irony is that Michael and Chase were once close friends, brothers in everything but blood, and Michael may still harbor genuine affection for him somewhere beneath the trauma and darkness. But right now, Michael's protective instincts override everything else, and anyone who threatens his children or his freedom becomes an enemy to neutralize. Chase believes he's fighting for justice, for Willow's freedom, for the truth. But Michael is fighting for his family, and Michael loves with the ferocity of a man who has lost too much to ever lose again. When Chase exposes the false alibi and pushes the narrative that Michael is the shooter, he isn't just jeopardizing Michael's legal standing, he's jeopardizing his ability to maintain custody of Wiley and Amelia. And Michael will not let a man he once trusted take his children away from him. That's where this storyline takes on its most chilling dimension. Michael's love for his children is no longer soft, patient, or tender. It is territorial, consuming, and absolute. He views himself as their only true protector, the only person standing between them and a dangerous world. Anything that threatens that bond must be eliminated, and Chase, knowingly or not, has stepped directly into Michael's line of fire. If Chase thinks he can expose Michael without consequences, he is tragically mistaken. Michael has already shown signs of emotional detachment and cold, calculated reasoning, traits that were never part of his personality before the firebombing. The ordeal scarred him physically and reshaped him psychologically. And now, with the stakes higher than ever, those traits could manifest in deeply destructive ways. Michael's retaliatory options are endless, and each one could devastate Chase's life. He could destroy Chase's career, leak damaging information to the media, frame Chase for wrongdoing, or use his family connections to turn Brooklyn against him. With Aurora Media at his disposal, Michael could even twist public opinion so severely that Chase becomes the villain in the eyes of Port Charles. And yet, despite all of these potential consequences, Chase is pressing forward, motivated by justice, loyalty to Willow, and his own moral compass. But morals don't win wars in Port Charles. Power does. Influence does. And Michael Corinthos has both in excess, now sharpened by trauma, and a willingness to cross lines he once never would have considered. As Michael's carefully constructed facade begins to crack under the weight of Chase's investigation, the tension between them is primed to erupt into a full-scale feud. The fallout could reshape alliances across Port Charles and fracture relationships far beyond just Michael and Chase themselves. The Corinthos and Quartermain families could be pulled into the crossfire, with Brooklyn forced to choose between her husband and her cousin, and Willow caught helplessly in the middle. Chase's determination to save Willow may ultimately destroy everything else he holds dear. And Michael, who has already risen from the ashes once this year, may be willing to burn down everything in his path to keep the life he fought so hard to reclaim. The deeper Chase digs, the more dangerous Michael becomes, and as the truth draws closer, Port Charles stands on the brink of a war that will leave no one unscathed. As Chase pushes forward with his investigation, the air in Port Charles grows electric with tension, the kind that hums beneath the surface long before the explosion. Chase believes he's closing in on the truth, following the trail from Jacinda Bracken to Councilman Ezra Boyle, piecing together a timeline that directly contradicts Michael Corinthos' alibi. But what Chase doesn't fully realize is that each step he takes is placing him on a collision course with a man who has quietly reinvented himself since returning from the brink of death. This is not the Michael Corinthos of 5 years ago, or even 1 year ago. This is a Michael who has seen death, tasted it, and clawed his way back with a renewed sense of purpose, sharpened instincts, and emotional armor reinforced by trauma and betrayal. He loved Chase once, nearly as a brother, but that part of him has been buried under layers of fear, loss, and a possessiveness over his children that borders on obsession. And that obsession has now become the driving force behind every choice he makes. Chase, for all his good intentions, has always been guided by a firm sense of right and wrong. It's what makes him an exceptional cop, but in this scenario, that unwavering moral compass is also what blinds him. He reflexively believes that once he exposes the truth, justice will prevail. He's convinced that bringing Michael's lies into the light will free Willow from an unjust charge, set Drew on the path to real justice, and restore balance to the lives thrown into chaos by the shooting. But Port Charles isn't a town where truth alone determines outcomes. Port Charles is a battlefield of power brokers, kingpins, media moguls, and morally flexible players who are willing to twist the truth, hide it, or destroy it if it serves their interests. Michael learned this the hard way, and Chase is about to learn it too. Meanwhile, Jacinda Bracken finds herself standing on treacherous ground. She never expected her night with Ezra Boyle to spiral into a murder investigation. She certainly never imagined that Michael Corinthos would use her, intentionally or otherwise, as the cornerstone of an alibi now beginning to crumble under Chase's scrutiny. Jacinda is no stranger to secrets. She's lived her entire life maneuvering through gray areas, balancing professional discretion with personal survival. But this is something far bigger than a discreet meeting with a high-profile client. This is a homicide investigation involving the wealthiest and most influential family in Port Charles. And as the truth starts to surface, Jacinda realizes that she is caught between two forces, Chase's determination and Michael's silent fury. One seeks the truth, the other seeks protection at any cost. Ezra Boyle, for his part, feels the walls closing in. His political ambitions demand a spotless reputation, and any implication that he was with Jacinda at the time of the shooting could spark a scandal capable of destroying his career in a single headline. Boyle isn't a man who handles pressure gracefully. He's cunning, calculating, and armed with his own network of allies prepared to defend him. When Chase begins asking questions, Boyle senses trouble. He knows Jacinda won't lie for him indefinitely, not with detectives circling. And he knows Michael Corinthos' name carries enough weight to crush him if Michael decides Ezra is a loose end that needs tying off. Ezra begins scrambling to control the narrative, but the harder he tries to hide, the guiltier he appears. And Chase, sensing weakness, pushes even harder. In the Corinthos household, Willow feels the tension before anyone speaks it aloud. She sees it in Michael's eyes, in the sleepless nights, the lingering anger, the forced calm that masks something darker underneath. She wants to believe him when he says he had nothing to do with Drew Cain's shooting. She wants to trust him, to rely on the man she built a life with. But something in him has changed so drastically since the firebombing that it shakes her. His protectiveness no longer feels like love, it feels like survival, as if he believes the world is lined with threats only he can neutralize. When Willow learns that Chase is investigating Michael, her heart shatters. She's caught between the man she once loved deeply and the father of her children, both of whom have shaped her life in ways she never expected. But as more evidence emerges, evidence that challenges Michael's story, Willow finds herself questioning everything. Across town, Brooklyn Quartermain begins to pick up on the strain between Chase and Michael. BLQ has always been fiercely loyal to her family, including Michael. But she is equally devoted to Chase, her husband, her partner, the man who stood by her through thick and thin. When she overhears bits of conversation about Chase investigating Michael privately, her stomach drops. She knows how dangerous that could be. She knows Michael loves her like a sister, but she also knows the new Michael doesn't hesitate the way he used to. BLQ becomes terrified that Chase is putting himself, and by extension, their marriage, in jeopardy. She urges Chase to back off, to let the PCPD handle the case through official channels. But Chase, stubborn and driven by a need to save Willow, refuses. He sees stepping aside as abandoning his duty, abandoning Willow, and abandoning the truth. This places immediate strain on his marriage, as BLQ tries to protect her husband from forces he doesn't fully understand. At Aurora Media, Michael begins quietly assembling a contingency plan. He pulls strings, checks financials, reviews personnel reports, and studies every potential crack Chase might use to expose him further. Michael understands the power of information, how it can be weaponized, manipulated, repurposed. With a single well-crafted story, he could undermine Chase's credibility, cast doubt on his methods, or portray the detective as unhinged and emotionally compromised. And the more Michael considers these options, the easier they become. It's frightening how natural this strategic darkness now feels for him, as if nearly dying unlocked a part of him that can no longer be contained. Michael tells himself this is necessary, that he is doing this to protect his children. But deep down, part of him recognizes that the man he once was might never return. As Chase closes in on the truth, he receives a warning. It's vague, just a whispered caution from an unnamed source, urging him to stop digging before he loses everything. Chase brushes it off, assuming the threat came from someone connected to Ezra Boyle. But the audience knows better. The shadow following Chase belongs to Michael, who is monitoring the detective's movements with increasing intensity. Michael begins orchestrating subtle disruptions, information that goes missing from Chase's desk, sources who suddenly recant their statements, witnesses who disappear without explanation. Nothing overt, nothing traceable, but enough to slow Chase down and send a clear message: turn back. Chase refuses. He meets privately with Alexis Davis, sharing the evidence he's gathered and expressing his certainty that Michael lied. Alexis listens carefully. She has always admired Chase's integrity and admired his loyalty to Willow. But she also knows the power Michael wields, and the danger Chase is placing himself in by challenging him. Alexis warns Chase that Michael is not the same man he grew up with, that the trauma he endured changed him in ways no one fully understands. But Chase is too close to the truth, too emotionally invested to walk away now. Meanwhile, Sonny Corinthos begins to sense that something is brewing. He's not blind to the changes in Michael. He saw it the moment Michael returned to Port Charles, the edge in his voice, the hardness in his eyes, the shift in his priorities. Sonny knows darkness when he sees it, because he's lived with his own for decades. When he hears whispers that Chase is investigating Michael, Sonny becomes torn. His relationship with Michael is fragile, riddled with conflict, resentment, and unspoken wounds. But Michael is still his son. And Sonny, despite all his flaws, protects his family with the same intensity Michael is now using to protect his children. Sonny begins quietly observing, watching both Chase and Michael from a distance, uncertain whether he should intervene or let the storm unfold naturally. The more Chase uncovers, the more the evidence points in Michael's direction. Nothing proves Michael pulled the trigger, but everything suggests he is hiding something crucial. He had motive, anger, betrayal, trauma. He had opportunity. And now, with Jacinda's alibi falling apart, he no longer has a shield. Chase becomes convinced that Michael is involved, and he starts preparing to bring his findings to the PCPD formally. But before he does, Michael makes his move. Late one evening, Chase returns home to find Brooke Lynn sitting on the couch, trembling. She's been contacted by someone at Aurora Media, someone who claims they have information that could destroy Chase's career. BLQ is terrified. She begs Chase to stop the investigation. She pleads with him to think of their future, their marriage, their stability. But Chase knows the timing isn't a coincidence. Michael is sending him a message: stop now, or everything you love will be collateral damage. Chase hesitates for the first time. Not because he fears Michael, but because he fears losing Brooke Lynn. He fears losing his badge. He fears losing everything he's worked so hard to build. But then he sees Willow's face, framed by fear, desperation, and betrayal. He remembers the woman he once loved, the woman who doesn't deserve to rot in prison for a crime she didn't commit. And Chase makes his choice. He presses forward. At this point, Michael's transformation is complete. The careful mask he once wore begins to slip, revealing a man capable of doing whatever it takes to keep his life intact. He arranges a meeting with Jacinda, demanding answers, pressing her for details about who she spoke to, what she told them, and whether her story is about to change. Jacinda tries to defend herself, insisting she never intended to jeopardize him. But Michael doesn't believe her. He's cold, sharp, intimidating in a way that startles her. She realizes in that moment that Michael Corinthos is no longer the man Port Charles once trusted. He is someone else now, someone she does not want to cross. Meanwhile, Ezra Boyle panics as rumors swirl. He becomes increasingly erratic, paranoid that Michael will expose him first to divert suspicion. In desperation, Boyle reaches out to Chase, offering information, but the exchange goes sideways when Boyle realizes Chase has gathered more truth than expected. Boyle then makes a fatal mistake: he tries to blackmail Michael. He demands that Michael protect him publicly, threatening to expose details about their alleged connection. But Michael does not negotiate with threats. He crushes them. What follows is a sequence of events that sends shockwaves through Port Charles: professional scandals, leaked documents, private meetings exploding into public confrontations, and alliances fracturing under pressure. Brooke Lynn and Chase find themselves pulled apart by the strain. Willow grapples with fear and confusion as Michael becomes increasingly unreachable. And Chase, now fully aware of the monster he's awakened, refuses to back down, even as Michael begins crafting a plan to eliminate him from the board entirely. Because for Michael Corinthos, there is only one rule left. Protect the children, no matter the cost. And Chase is now the greatest threat to that mission.